Welcome, everyone, to this explainer. Today, we're popping the hood on an absolute powerhouse of an engine, one that's literally running billions of devices right now. From Mars rovers to that Android phone in your pocket, we are decoding the Java Virtual Machine, or the JVM, and the massive ecosystem built right on top of it. Whether you're coding enterprise microservices or the next hit mobile app, understanding how this engine actually ticks is absolutely crucial. So let's dive right in. All right, to really get the JVM, we have to start with the legendary philosophy that made Java, well, everywhere. Conceived by James Gosling and his team way back in 1995, the goal was simple, but honestly incredibly ambitious for the time. Write once, run anywhere. But what does that actually mean for us? How do we take code written by a human and guarantee it runs identically on a Windows server, a Mac laptop, or a Linux-based phone? Well, the secret is all in one brilliant architectural choice. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the write once promise, then head inside the virtual machine, look at managing Java's memory, check out the execution engine, and finally explore the modern Java ecosystem. Let's get to it. All right, part one, the write once promise. So how exactly does Java pull off this magic trick of running on any device without needing to recompile? Two words: Java bytecode. You see, when you compile your Java program, you aren't spitting out machine code for your specific laptop's hardware. Nope, you're creating an architecture-neutral intermediate representation. Yep, those familiar .class files you see sitting in your project folders. As long as a device has a JVM installed, it can read this universal language. It completely decouples your code from the underlying hardware. Pretty neat, right? Moving on to part two, inside the virtual machine. To really visualize how that bytecode becomes functioning software, let's just imagine the JVM as a super organized factory. We've basically got three main departments here. Up top, the class loader subsystem. That's our receiving dock. Right below it, the memory areas, which act like a highly structured warehouse. And down at the bottom, the execution engine. That's the assembly line where the real heavy lifting happens. Let's check out that receiving dock first. So, the class loader subsystem pulls in the code, checks that it's structurally sound, and gets it ready to go. It does this in three distinct steps. First up is loading, where it just reads the binary data of your class files and stores them away. Next is linking, and this one is a massive security checkpoint. The bytecode verifier scrutinizes the code for anything malicious or malformed. Honestly, this is exactly why Java is so famous for being secure by design. If the code is broken, it throws an error and stops it dead in its tracks right here. Linking also sets up memory for static variables and resolves references. And finally, we hit initialization, where those static variables actually get their real values. Only after surviving all of that is the code allowed onto the factory floor. Okay, part three, managing Java's memory. Now, the JVM is incredibly strict about how it categorizes memory, splitting it into 5 distinct areas. You've got the method area, which stores all your class-level data. Then there's the heap area. This is a big one because it's where all your dynamically created objects live. Now, both the method area and the heap are shared across your entire application. But we also have strictly isolated areas, the Java stacks, the PC registers, which keep track of the current executing instruction, and finally, the native method stacks for any non-Java code you're running. Now, check this out. See how the isolated thread frames extend out dynamically from the main heap? Think of the heap like a bustling public town square, where all objects are shared, whereas the Java stack is completely isolated, like a private office. Every single time a thread executes a method, it pops a brand new frame onto its stack just to hold local variables and intermediate results. And the moment that method is done, boom, the frame is destroyed. This strict physical isolation is the absolute secret sauce of Java. It prevents different threads from accidentally messing with each other's local work, which is literally the key to stable, secure multi-threading. All right, let's head to part four, the execution engine. Welcome to the assembly line. Here, the interpreter is reading the bytecode on the fly, translating it line by line. But as we all know, interpreting code continuously is famously painfully slow. Enter the just-in-time, or JIT, compiler. This thing is brilliant. The engine essentially spies on your code as it's running, and when it catches a hotspot, a piece of code being used over and over, the JIT compiler swoops right in and compiles it directly into native machine code for maximum speed. Oh, and off to the side we have the garbage collector. Think of it as a tireless janitor, just constantly sweeping up and reclaiming memory from objects you aren't using anymore, so you never have to worry about manually managing memory leaks. A real game changer. Finally, part 5. The modern Java ecosystem. So we've taken apart the engine. Now let's look at the cars driving on it today. For the longest time, the enterprise world stubbornly held on to Java 8. But guess what? The industry's idea of a safe bet for long-term support has officially shifted. The new gold standards are Java 17 and Java 21 LTS. These newer versions pack such massive improvements in performance and language features that developers are finally eagerly making the jump to modernize their legacy systems. We're also seeing a massive evolution in syntax. And let's be real, a lot of that is driven by Kotlin. Just look at this stark contrast. What used to take dozens of lines of tedious boilerplate in Java, private fields, getters, setters, constructors, you name it, Kotlin achieves in literally one single line. It's really no wonder Kotlin has practically taken over Android development. That kind of conciseness, along with built-in type inference, huge. And it's not just about saving keystrokes, folks. It's about saving our sanity when dealing with asynchronous tasks. Let's face it, manual thread management in Java can sometimes devolve into a nightmare of complex errors. Kotlin just elegantly sidesteps the whole shebang with coroutines. It gives us this highly readable, incredibly streamlined way to handle concurrency, especially when you pair it with the Flow API for reactive programming. It perfectly illustrates how the JVM ecosystem lets new languages innovate right on top of its rock-solid foundation. But hey, don't count vanilla Java out. It is definitely fighting back. The latest developments highlight JDK23, and it is bringing some serious firepower for modern cloud-native development. A massive standout feature is structured concurrency. It lets developers manage multiple, super complex multi-threading tasks as just a single, clean unit of work. Managing cancellations and errors is just so much easier now. Plus, JDK23 seriously beefs up security with improved TLS support, which is absolutely vital for keeping data locked down in distributed cloud environments. Now, when it comes to actually building web services on top of this engine, the Spring framework is still the undisputed heavyweight champion. It's sitting super comfortably at around 75% market usage. With its recent pushes into Spring AI and baked-in support for virtual threads, it is for sure the default for enterprise systems. However, you definitely want to keep an eye on that 12% slice over there from Micronaut and Quarkus. They are purpose-built for serverless cloud apps, a space where extremely low memory footprints are absolutely king. And you know, in a tech ecosystem where developers will literally argue about everything, JUnit 5 is the one thing we all seem to agree on. The data shows it holds a staggering 85 to 90% adoption rate for testing. It's the absolute constant. It's almost always paired with Mockito 2, which holds a very strong 50% share for mocking dependencies during those tests. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. We've just seen how the JVM's architecture, its universal bytecode, its strict memory areas, and that incredibly dynamic execution engine has scaled to support basically the entire global internet. With Kotlin pushing the boundaries of developer experience and Java radically upgrading itself for the cloud era, this engine is running hotter and better than ever. But as we move into a future dominated by serverless and AI-driven architectures, is write once, run anywhere still the ultimate end goal? Or is it simply the new baseline? Something to chew on. Keep exploring, and thanks so much for joining me today.